The Lost Hero is the first book of the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. Out of all the books in the Riordanverse, this book is one of the most hated and disliked ones in the fandom. If you watched my book review on The Lost Hero, then you'd know that I loved it, but I also mentioned how it's my least favorite in the Heroes of Olympus series because of some reasons. Looking back at it though, I realized that my thoughts were also reciprocated by some people in the fandom, while others had more reasons to dislike The Lost Hero. In this video, I'll be exploring this idea more and explaining why The Lost Hero is so hated. So before getting into it, there will obviously be spoilers on The Lost Hero because I'll be breaking it down and going through its many aspects. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Reason number 1. The timing of the book's publication. The Lost Hero was published on October 12, 2010, and this was a year after the last book of PJO, or The Last Olympian, was released. The Last Olympian is arguably one of the most beloved and talked about books in the fandom, to the point that a lot of people claim that this was Rick's best ending for a 5-book series, and I have to agree. Like, if you've read this book, then you know just how epic it was, but it also posed a bit of a threat to the Lost Hero. Around The Last Olympian, Rick Riordan's readers had just finished the entire 5 books of PJO, and they were waiting for more Percy Jackson-centered adventures, but The Lost Hero did not give them this. Fans immediately tried reading it and thought it was another PJO book. I mean, it was still in the Riordanverse, but it wasn't the same. It was written in a third-person perspective and expanded the Percy Jackson world. Even if it is cool to see Rick expound and give more writing experiments through switching POVs, it felt different somehow, and fans didn't really think it was good. They missed Percy's perspective, and what didn't help were the new characters that we got in this book. Which brings us to reason number 2, the new characters. The Lost Hero opened not just a new book series, but also a lot of new characters that were never in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I mean, the first chapter is literally a new character already, and that was Jason Grace, a Roman demigod son of Jupiter. Aside from Jason, we also get introduced to other demigods like Piper McLean and Leo Valdez. Jason, Piper, and Leo were dubbed as the Lost Trio based on the title of the book, but they weren't that accepted in the fandom. Some fans thought that they were trying to replace Percy, Annabeth, and Grover, who were the original trio of PJO, and this did not settle well with them. Jason and Piper were especially hated because fans found them uninteresting and boring along with their romance. Readers claimed that Jason and Piper were the new Percy and Annabeth, and people just went on to hate on Jason and Piper. I actually made 2 videos before on why Jason and Piper are hated in the fandom, so you can check that out, but ultimately, I'll try to summarize them in this video. For the Jason video, I stated there that Jason was hated as a character because readers struggled to connect with him in The Lost Hero, and it isn't because Jason is a bad person. In fact, I'd say Jason is one of the kindest people in these books, but it was because he had amnesia in The Lost Hero. Reading a character who doesn't even know who the heck he is probably one of the most frustrating things to encounter as a reader, and I personally felt that too. Jason was a big question mark almost throughout the entire book, and we just got secondhand information about who he is. Jason even doubts himself throughout his adventures because he didn't know anything at all. He's clueless, and his perspectives provided no information for us to connect with. They just felt like filler that explained what was happening with Jason's reaction to them, but ultimately, nothing that emotional or engaging for readers to understand him. Added with the fact that people already had the impression that Jason was the new Percy, Jason felt like a blander and more boring person because we literally don't know anything about him, and I guess that annoyed a lot of fans. It was obvious to them that Jason was a major character trying to fill in Percy's role, but they felt like Jason was the discount version. For Piper's side, people did not like her simply because she wasn't that developed. Piper's entire role in The Lost Hero was to be a love interest to Jason, and her perspectives kept revolving around that idea. She would get worried about her relationship with him, get jealous of her half-sibling Drew Tanaka whenever Drew flirted with Jason, and ultimately, her world focused on just Jason. Like, that's almost her entire personality and perspectives in The Lost Hero, and it made her insufferable at times for readers. And I guess that's why a lot of readers, including me, didn't like Piper immediately in this book, but she did improve over time. The only character that didn't receive as much hate or dislike was Leo Valdez. In the fandom, Leo was generally the most loved and liked character. Even I placed him in the Love So Much tier in my tier ranking Riordanverse characters video because he was the most entertaining person to read about in The Lost Hero, and this first impression lasted for a lifetime. Leo's perspectives were characterized with relatable moments of humor, with hints of his tragic past when his mother was killed by Gaia. Leo proved to be the only character who the readers connected with, because if you compare his perspectives to Jason and Piper's, there's more depth and relatability. Leo actually felt like a breath of fresh air because his chapters were arguably the most entertaining ones, but they were only a portion of the book. The rest of The Lost Hero revolved around Jason and Piper, and readers like me had to trudge through all of that. And to be honest, I just waited a lot for Leo's perspectives. Aside from the new characters that people didn't connect with though, fans have another reason to dislike this book. Reason number 3. The slow plot. Generally speaking, I do notice that Rick Riordan's first books in the series are mostly kind of slow-paced. I felt this whenever reading books like Magnus Chase's first book or The Sword of Summer, The Red Pyramid or the King Chronicles' first book, and even The Lightning Thief or the first book of PJO. They can be a bit slow because he's trying to introduce this new world and characters, but nothing could compare to how slow The Lost Hero felt. There were many chapters that dragged the book because Rick had to give as much detail as he can about Jason, Piper, and Leo for us to understand them better. Though, we didn't really get that much for Jason. Jason was still pretty much under-described because he didn't know himself or his past. But for the rest, it kind of felt pretty info-dumpy. Aside from this though, the book also tended to be a bit repetitive with the amount of attacks the trio encounters. I mean, look at it this way. The trio first starts their quest in Boreas' place, and then they're attacked. They fly on Festus to escape, and then they land, and then they're attacked again by Cyclopses. After that, they meet Medea and get attacked, and then they go to King Midas and get attacked, and then they set up camp and get attacked by Lycaon. There's so much repetitive moments of, oh, the trio goes here, and then they get into a fight against monsters, and then they escape, that it felt like Rick was doing it over and over again sometimes. Although this provided pretty good fight scenes, it just didn't really bring the readers that much to these moments, as well as Rick's other books, wherein the stakes were higher and had more depth to it through the characters. An example of this would be the House of Hades, wherein the 7 fought for their lives in the Necromantion, survived a deadly journey to Epirus, and fought off attacks from monsters just to meet Percy and Annabeth on the other side. It's a great story that has a lot of depth and crazy adventures, and I guess that's why The House of Hades is arguably the fandom's most favorite Heroes of Olympus book. The Lost Hero tried to amp up the stakes by making Jason, Piper, and Leo encounter monster after monster, but it kind of did the opposite because the readers didn't feel that compelled to root for the trio due to the lack of connection they have to both Piper and Jason. 2 out of the 3 new main characters in The Lost Hero were not relatable and liked, which brought down the mood even more. So, at this point, let's summarize the video. The Lost Hero is a book that many readers didn't really like. Although there were great moments to look back on, aspects like the slow plot, lack of connection to the characters, and even its timing led to many fans hating or disliking this book. Personally, I did appreciate The Lost Hero in the end, even if it was a hard book to get through at times. It had memorable moments when Jason, Piper, and Leo bonded and grew throughout the book, and I would never say that The Lost Hero is a bad book. It's a type of book that would feel like a lot of information to read for the first time, but it would ultimately be the type to grow on you once you reread it. This was my personal experience when looking back at this book, and I don't think it deserved as much hate as it did before. Overall, I still stand at what I said in my book review of The Lost Hero. It's a great book with cool moments, but it's not my most favorite simply because I prefer other books in the Riordanverse. It gave us all a good introduction of the Heroes of Olympus, but it probably would have been executed better had Rick adjusted some parts of the book, like the characters and the plot. So how about you? What do you think of The Lost Hero? Let me know in the comments down below.